Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Horizon, watching the massive alien ship grow larger on the main screen. After 3 years of traveling through space, humanity had finally found another intelligent species. The excitement on the bridge was impossible to hide. "Distance to the alien vessel?" Morrison asked his navigation officer. 2,000 kilometers in closing, sir," replied Lieutenant Dan Cooper, his voice tight with nervousness. Dr. Lisa Cameron moved closer to the captain's chair, her tablet filled with notes about the first contact protocols. She had spent her entire career studying the possibility of meeting aliens, but now that it was happening, she felt both thrilled and terrified. "Remember everyone," Morrison said to his crew. "We represent all of humanity today. Let's make our species proud." The alien ship was unlike anything humans had ever built. It was dark green and shaped like a massive triangle with strange symbols glowing along its hull. The ship was at least 5 times larger than the Horizon, which made Morrison wonder about the technology these aliens possessed. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission," announced Communications Officer Ben Parker. "It's coming through on multiple frequencies." "The computer is trying to decode it now," Morrison nodded. "Put it through when you have it ready." The main screen flickered, and suddenly they were looking at their first alien. The creature had green scaly skin, yellow eyes, and a mouth full of sharp teeth. It wore what looked like military clothing with metal decorations across the chest. "I am Admiral Zethkar of the Korthek Empire," the alien said in perfect English, though his voice sounded cold and mechanical. "You are the species called humans from the planet Earth." Morrison stepped forward. "Yes, I am Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earthship Horizon. We come in peace, seeking friendship and trade between our peoples." Admiral Zethkar's mouth curved into what might have been a smile, but it looked more like a threat. "Friendship, an interesting concept. We have heard of your species from our scouts. You have traveled far from your homeworld." "We have," Morrison replied carefully. "We hope to learn from you and share our own knowledge. Perhaps we can help each other." "Help each other," Zethkar repeated, his yellow eyes never blinking. "Yes, perhaps we can. We invite you to our ship for a formal meeting. Bring your senior officers and your scientists. We wish to learn more about humans." Dr. Cameron whispered to Morrison, "Captain, something feels wrong about this. His body language doesn't match his words." Morrison nodded slightly but kept his expression neutral. "We would be honored to visit your ship, Admiral. We'll prepare a delegation immediately." "Excellent. We will send a transport vessel to collect you. Come prepared to stay for several hours. We have much to discuss." The transmission ended and the bridge fell silent. Morrison looked around at his crew, seeing the mix of excitement and worry on their faces. "Sir," said Chief Engineer Rick Davis, "our sensors are picking up some strange readings from their ship. Their power output is massive, and they have weapon systems we can't even identify." "Noted," Morrison replied. "Dr. Cameron, I want you to come with me. Ben, you're our communications expert, so you're coming too. Rick, I need you to monitor their ship while we're gone. If anything seems wrong, you get us out of there immediately." "What about security?" asked Lieutenant Amy Sullivan, the ship's medic and security officer. "We'll bring sidearms, but hidden. We don't want to appear hostile, but we need to be prepared." Hour later, Morrison, Cameron, Parker, and Sullivan stood in the Horizon's shuttle bay, waiting for the alien transport. When it arrived, they were surprised by how advanced it looked. The small ship seemed to move without any visible engines, and it made no sound at all. The transport's door opened with a soft hiss, revealing 2 Korthek soldiers in full armor. They carried weapons that looked like nothing humans had ever seen. "Before, welcome, humans," said one of the soldiers. "Please enter. Admiral Zethkar is waiting." As they boarded the alien ship, Morrison noticed that everything was built for creatures larger than humans. The Korthek were at least 7 feet tall, and their ship reflected their size. The walls were covered with symbols that seemed to move. When he wasn't looking directly at them, the ride to the Korthek mothership took only a few minutes, but it felt much longer. Neither of the alien soldiers spoke, and the silence was uncomfortable. Dr. Cameron kept taking notes on her tablet, recording everything she saw. When they docked with the larger ship, Morrison was amazed by its size. The docking bay alone was larger than the entire horizon. Hundreds of Korthak moved around the bay, working on various ships and equipment. They all stopped to stare at the humans as they passed. Admiral Zethkar met them at the entrance to the bay. Up close, he was even more intimidating. His scales were darker than they had appeared on screen, and scars covered his arms and face. "Welcome to the Devastator," Zethkar said. "I hope you find your visit educational." They were led through corridors that seemed to stretch forever. The walls were covered with what looked like trophies, but Morrison couldn't tell what they were from. Some looked like weapons, others like pieces of technology, and some looked disturbingly like they might be from living creatures. "These are remembrances of our victories," Zethkar explained when he noticed Morrison looking at the displays. "The Korthak Empire has conquered many worlds. Each trophy represents a species that thought they could resist us." Dr. Cameron felt a chill run down her spine. "How many species have you encountered?" "Hundreds," Zethkar replied casually. "Most were not worth preserving. A few became useful as servants. Very few were strong enough to be worthy opponents." They entered a large hall filled with tables loaded with food. The smell was strange but not unpleasant. Dozens of Korthak were already seated, all wearing military uniforms. Morrison noticed that they all carried weapons, even at what was supposed to be a diplomatic dinner. "Please sit," Zethkar said, gesturing to a table near the front of the room. "We have prepared foods that should be safe for human consumption. Our scientists studied your biology from the samples your ship's exhaust provided." Morrison and his team sat down, but none of them felt comfortable. The Korthak were all staring at them, and their expressions weren't friendly. "Tell me about Earth," Zethkar said as the meal began. "How many humans live there? What are your military capabilities? How many ships like yours do you have?" "Earth has about 8 billion people," Morrison replied carefully. "We're a peaceful species, focused on exploration and learning. The Horizon is one of our first deep space vessels." "Peaceful," Zethkar repeated, and several other Korthak laughed. "That is unfortunate. Peaceful species do not last long in this galaxy." Dr. Cameron noticed that the Korthak weren't eating the same food they had been served. "Admiral, what exactly do your people eat?" "We eat what we conquer," Zethkar replied with that threatening smile again. "The weak exist to serve the strong. It is the natural order of things." Ben Parker had been quietly recording the conversation, but now he spoke up. "You mentioned scouts. Have you been watching Earth?" "For some time," Zethkar confirmed. "We needed to understand what kind of species." "You were before making contact. Your technology is primitive, but you show promise. With proper guidance, humans could become useful servants of the Empire." Morrison felt his blood run cold. "Servants? We came here seeking friendship between equals." "Equals?" Zethkar stood up, and every Korthak in the room did the same. "Look around you, human. Does this look like the ship of your equal? You traveled for years to reach us, while we have been watching your world for decades. You are children playing with toys, while we command the power of stars." Suddenly alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Morrison's heart sank as he realized what was happening. "Ah," Zethkar said calmly, "it appears your ship has been destroyed. Such a pity. Now you can stay here and learn what it truly means to serve the Korthak Empire." The human delegation was surrounded by armed Korthak soldiers before they could react. As they were led away to prison cells, Morrison heard Zethkar giving orders to his officers. "Send a message to the fleet. We have learned everything we need to know about the humans. Begin preparations for the invasion of Earth." 6 months had passed since Captain Jake Morrison and his crew were captured by the Korthak Empire. They were now prisoners on the Korthak homeworld, a dark planet with red skies and air that smelled like metal. The prison was built into a mountain, with thousands of cells holding creatures from dozens of different worlds. Morrison sat in his cell, staring through the energy bars at the corridor beyond. The Korthak had separated the human prisoners, putting each of them in different sections of the prison. He had only seen Dr. Lisa Cameron twice since their capture, and engineer Rick Davis and medic Amy Sullivan even less. The cell next to Morrison's held a creature that looked like a giant insect with blue skin. It had been there when Morrison arrived, and it never spoke. Most of the prisoners had given up hope long ago. They just sat in their cells, waiting for nothing. "Human," a voice called from across the corridor. Morrison looked up to see a Korthak guard approaching his cell. This one was smaller than most, with lighter green scales and fewer scars. "What do you want?" Morrison asked, not bothering to stand. "Up, Admiral Zethkar wishes to see you. You will come now." Morrison was led through the prison's winding corridors. Along the way, he saw hundreds of alien prisoners. Some looked like they had been there for years, their bodies thin and their eyes empty. Others were newer arrivals, still fighting against their captors. The guard brought him to a large room with a window that looked out over the Korthak capital city. Tall buildings stretched to the horizon, all built from the same dark metal. Ships flew between the buildings, and Morrison could see that many of them carried what looked like cargo containers. "Do you know what those containers hold?" Admiral Zethkar asked from behind Morrison. The human captain turned to face his captor. "I assume supplies for your empire," Morrison replied. "Slaves," Zethkar said with satisfaction. "Fresh slaves. From our newest conquests. The Korthak Empire grows larger every day. Soon we will have ships full of humans as well." Morrison felt anger building in his chest, but he forced himself to stay calm. "What do you want from me?" "Information about Earth's defenses? We know your planet has weapons, but we need to understand how they work. Tell us, and your friends will be treated better. Refuse, and they will suffer." "I won't help you attack." "My people," Zethkar laughed, a harsh sound that echoed off the walls. "You humans are so stubborn, but everyone breaks eventually. Take him back to his cell, reduce his food by half." Meanwhile, on the other side of the galaxy, Earth was preparing for war. The message that Communications Officer Ben Parker had managed to send before the Horizon's destruction had reached Earth 3 months after the ship was lost. It was short but clear. The Korthak were hostile, and the diplomatic mission had failed. General Sam Mitchell stood in the command center of Earth's military headquarters, studying reports from his intelligence teams. They had been working around the clock to learn everything they could about the Korthak Empire. "What do we know so far?" Mitchell asked his staff. "Not much, sir," replied Colonel Kate Washington, his second in command. "We've detected long-range scouts near our outer planets, but they stay far away from our ships. We think they're studying our technology. And our rescue mission? Still in preparation. We've built the UES Nightfall using our most advanced stealth technology. It should be invisible to their sensors." "Captain Tony Garcia will command the rescue team," Mitchell nodded. Captain Garcia was one of their best special operations officers. If anyone could bring Morrison and his crew home, it was him. On the Korthak homeworld, Dr. Lisa Cameron was having her own meeting with Admiral Zethkar. They had brought her to a laboratory where Korthak scientists were studying samples from various alien species. "Your human biology is fascinating," Zethkar told her as they walked between tables covered with scientific equipment. "You are weaker than most species we have conquered, but your brains work in interesting ways." Cameron tried not to look at the specimens floating in tanks along the walls. Some of them looked like they might have once been intelligent beings. "What are you planning to do with us?" she asked. "That depends on how useful you prove to be. Some of you will be sold as curiosities. Others might be used for breeding programs. The smart ones will become servants and translators." "And if we refuse to cooperate?" Zethkar stopped walking and turned to face her. His yellow eyes were cold and empty. "Look around you, Dr. Cameron. See all these specimens? They all refused to cooperate at first. Now they serve science in a different way." Cameron felt sick, but she forced herself to stay strong. "You're making a mistake. Humans don't give up easily. When my people learn what happened to us, they'll come looking. Let them come, Sethkar replied. We have been watching your species for years. Your technology is centuries behind ours. Your largest warships are smaller than our escort vessels. If your people are foolish enough to attack us, we will simply add Earth to our list of conquered worlds. 2 weeks later, the UES Nightfall arrived in the Korthek system. The ship was completely invisible to sensors, using technology that bent light and energy around its hull. Captain Garcia and his team of 12 Special Forces soldiers had spent months training for this mission. Target confirmed, reported Lieutenant Bill Hayes, the ship's sensor officer. Large prison facility built into the mountain, just like our intelligence suggested. Garcia studied the prison through the ship's advanced telescopes. It was massive, with energy shields and guard towers surrounding the main structure. Getting in would be difficult. Getting out with prisoners would be nearly impossible. Sir, said Sergeant Nancy Foster, the team's demolitions expert, I count at least 50 guard positions and multiple shield generators. This is going to be rough. That's why they sent us, Garcia replied. Begin scanning for human life signs. It took 6 hours to locate Morrison and his crew. They were being held in different sections of the prison, which would make the rescue more complicated. Garcia divided his team into 3 groups, each responsible for rescuing specific prisoners. The attack began at midnight, Korthek time. The Special Forces team used advanced weapons that could cut through the prison's energy shields. They moved quickly and quietly, taking out guards before they could raise an alarm. Garcia found Morrison's cell first. The captain was thin and weak from months of poor food, but his eyes were still sharp. American cavalry? Morrison asked with a weak smile as Garcia cut through the energy bars. Something like that, Garcia replied. Can you walk? I can run, if I have to. Meanwhile, other members of the rescue team were freeing Cameron, Davis, and Sullivan. But as they moved through the prison, they discovered something horrible. The Korthak weren't just keeping prisoners here. They were conducting experiments on them. Cameron found herself in a laboratory filled with evidence of torture and medical experiments. Computer files showed that the Korthak had been testing various alien species to see which ones made the best slaves. They had detailed records of hundreds of extinct species, all wiped out by Korthak conquest. My God, Cameron whispered as she copied the files to a portable device. They've been doing this for centuries. The rescue team managed to escape the prison, but not before setting off every alarm in the facility. As their ship lifted off from the planet's surface, Korthak fighters began pursuing them. Multiple contacts, reported Hayes. At least 20 fighters closing fast. Garcia pushed the ship's engines to maximum power. The nightfall was fast, but the Korthak ships were faster. Energy blasts lit up the space around them as they raced toward the edge of the system. Stealth field failing, announced engineer Clark Moore. They've got some kind of tracking system we didn't know about. Morrison, now on the bridge despite his weakness, watched the tactical display. Captain, can this ship fight? We're built for stealth, not combat, Garcia replied. But we've got some tricks. The Nightfall's hidden weapon systems activated, surprising the Korthak fighters. Advanced missiles streaked out from the rescue ship, destroying 3 enemy vessels in seconds. But more ships were coming, including larger warships. Jump drive charging, reported Moore. 30 seconds to escape velocity. The Korthak were closing fast. Energy blasts struck the Nightfall's shields, causing sparks to fly from control panels. Cameron held on to her copied files, knowing that the information they contained could save Earth. Jump drive ready, Moore announced. Do it. Garcia ordered. Space twisted around the Nightfall as it jumped to faster-than-light speed. Behind them, the Korthak fleet was left in empty space. Their prey escaped. Admiral Zefkar stood in his command center, watching the human ship disappear from his sensors. For the first time in his long career, he felt something he had never experienced before: respect for an enemy. Sir, reported one of his officers, the humans showed technology we haven't seen before. Their stealth systems were more advanced than our intelligence indicated. Zethkar nodded slowly. Send a message to the invasion fleet. Tell them to accelerate their preparations. The humans are more dangerous than we thought. As the nightfall raced toward Earth, Morrison studied the files that Cameron had recovered. The evidence was clear. The Korthic Empire was responsible for the extinction of dozens of intelligent species. They had enslaved entire worlds and treated living beings as nothing more than property. The Korthic invasion fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of Earth's solar system. Admiral Zethkar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Destroyer of Worlds, looking at the blue planet that hung in the darkness ahead. 200 warships followed behind him, the largest invasion force the Korthic Empire had ever assembled. Begin long-range scans, Zethkar ordered his bridge crew. I want to know the position of every human ship and weapon platform. The scan results surprised him. Earth's space was filled with ships. Hundreds of vessels moved in organized patterns around the planet and its moon. Space stations bristled with weapons that looked far more advanced than the primitive technology. His scouts had reported. "Sir," reported his sensor officer, "we're detecting over 300 human vessels. Their technology appears to have improved significantly since our last intelligence reports." Zethkar frowned. It had only been 8 months since they captured the human diplomatic mission. How could a primitive species upgrade their technology so quickly? "No matter," he said finally. "We outnumber them and our ships are larger. Begin." The attack. On Earth, Admiral Helen Brooks stood in the command center of the Global Defense Network. She had been preparing for this moment ever since the rescue team brought back Captain Morrison and his crew. The files that Dr. Cameron had stolen from the Korthic prison had given Earth everything they needed to prepare for war. "Korthic fleet detected," reported her tactical officer. 200 ships, just as our intelligence predicted. Brooks nodded. The rescued prisoners had provided detailed information about Korthic military tactics and ship designs. Earth scientists had worked around the clock to develop weapons specifically designed to fight the alien invaders. "Signal all fleet commanders," Brooks ordered. "Execute Plan Thunderstrike." Captain Tony Garcia, now commanding the battleship Use Vengeance, received the attack order with grim satisfaction. His ship was one of 50 new warships built specifically to fight the Korthic. Every weapon system had been designed using intelligence gathered during the rescue mission. "All ships, this is Garcia," he broadcast to the human fleet. "Remember what these monsters did to our people. Remember the innocent species they destroyed. Today we make them pay." The battle began when the Korthic fleet reached Mars. Zethkar expected the humans to defend their homeworld directly, but instead, human ships attacked from multiple directions at once. The coordination was perfect, as if the humans had been planning this battle for years. "Impossible," Zethkar muttered as he watched human weapons tear through his forward ships. The energy beams were focused in exactly the right frequencies to penetrate Korthic shields. The missiles seemed to anticipate his ship's defensive movements. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "we've lost 12 ships in the first wave. Human weapons are far more effective than our projections indicated." Zethkar had conquered 47 worlds during his career. He had never seen defenders fight with such precision and determination. The humans weren't just defending their planet. They were fighting like they had a personal grudge against every Korthak in the fleet. Captain Morrison, now recovered from his imprisonment, commanded a squadron of fast attack ships near Jupiter. His job was to prevent Korthic vessels from escaping the battle to report back to their empire. Every enemy ship had to be destroyed. "Target the communication arrays first," Morrison ordered his pilots. "Don't let any of them send messages home." His ships dove at the Korthic fleet like hunting wolves. The new human fighters were smaller and faster than anything the Korthic had faced before. They struck quickly, destroyed their targets, and vanished before the enemy could respond. Dr. Cameron watched the battle from Earth's command center, analyzing Korthak tactics and suggesting modifications to human strategy. The aliens were brave fighters, but they were used to overwhelming weaker enemies with superior numbers and technology. They had never fought an enemy that understood their weaknesses. "Admiral Brooks," Cameron reported, "the Korthik are trying to form a defensive formation around their flagship. If we can break that formation, their command structure will collapse." Brooks studied the tactical display. The human fleet had already destroyed 60 Korthik ships, but the aliens were learning to adapt. They needed to end this battle quickly before the Korthik figured out how to counter human tactics. "All ships, focus fire on the enemy flagship," Brooks ordered. "Take down their command ship." The UES Vengeance led the attack on Zethkar's vessel. Garcia had spent months studying the design of Korthik warships, looking for weaknesses. He knew exactly where to strike. "Target their power core," Garcia told his weapons officer. "Full spread, all tubes." Advanced human torpedoes streaked through space toward the destroyer of worlds. The Korthik flagship shields flared as the weapons struck, but the torpedoes had been specifically designed to penetrate Korthik defenses. On the bridge of his flagship, Zethkar felt the ship shake under the human attack. Warning lights flashed all around him as his crew reported damage throughout the vessel. "Shield generators failing," one officer reported. "Hull breaches on decks 7 through 12. "Engineering reports power core instability," added another, Zethkar couldn't believe what was happening. The humans were supposed to be primitive. Their technology was supposed to be centuries behind Korthik science. How were they winning this battle? "Sir," his communications officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission from the human fleet." "Put it through," Zethkar ordered. The main screen showed Captain Morrison standing on the bridge of his ship. The human looked different from the broken prisoner Zethkar remembered. Morrison's eyes were hard and filled with cold anger. "Admiral Zethkar," Morrison said, "this is Captain Morrison of the United Earth Fleet. You remember me, don't you? I was your prisoner for 6 months. What do you want, human?" Zethkar replied. "I want you to understand something," Morrison continued. "You made a mistake when you attacked our diplomatic mission. You made a bigger mistake when you tortured and enslaved innocent beings from dozens of species. But your biggest mistake was thinking that humans would just accept what you did," Zethkar laughed, but it sounded forced. "You may win this battle, human, but the Korthik Empire spans hundreds of worlds. You cannot fight us all." Morrison's expression didn't change. "Watch us." The transmission ended, and Zethkar found himself staring at empty space on his screen. Around him, his flagship continued to take damage from human weapons. More than half of his invasion fleet had been destroyed, and the humans showed no signs of slowing their attack. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "remaining ships are requesting permission to retreat." Zethkar wanted to give that order, but he knew it was too late. The humans had positioned their forces to surround the Korthik fleet. There would be no escape. "All ships," he broadcast to his remaining vessels, "prepare for final assault. If we must die here, we will take as many humans with us as possible." The last phase of the battle was the most brutal. The surviving Korthik ships, knowing they were doomed, threw themselves at Earth's defenders with desperate fury. Several human vessels were destroyed, and one Korthik ship managed to break through the defensive lines. The enemy ship headed straight for Earth, intending to crash into one of the planet's major cities. Captain Garcia, seeing what was happening, turned the Vengeance to intercept. "All power to engines," Garcia ordered. "We have to stop that ship." The Vengeance raced toward Earth, trying to catch the Korthik vessel before it could reach the planet's atmosphere. Garcia's ship was faster, but the enemy had a head start. "Firing all weapons," Garcia's weapons officer reported. Energy beams lashed out at the Korthik ship, but its pilot was determined to complete his suicide mission. The alien vessel continued toward Earth even as human weapons tore pieces from its hull. Garcia made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. He ordered his ship to ram the Korthik vessel, sacrificing the Vengeance and its crew. To save millions of people on Earth's surface, the two ships collided in a brilliant explosion that could be seen from the planet below. Both vessels were destroyed instantly, but Earth was saved. In space, the last Korthik ships were being systematically destroyed by human forces. Admiral Zethkar, his flagship crippled and dying, sent one final message to his empire. "The humans are not what we thought," he transmitted. "They fight like demons. They know our weaknesses. Do not underestimate them as I did." The transmission ended when a human torpedo finally destroyed the destroyer of worlds. Admiral Zethkar died never knowing that his message would never reach the Korthic Empire. Human ships had jammed all long-range communications during the battle. When the fighting was over, Admiral Brooks stood in Earth's command center, looking at the tactical display that showed the wreckage of 200 Korthic ships. The human fleet had suffered losses too. 37 ships had been destroyed, including the Vengeance, and over 8,000 brave men and women had died defending their homeworld. But Earth had survived, and the Korthic invasion force had been completely annihilated. President Maria Rodriguez arrived at the command center as the last enemy ship was confirmed destroyed. She looked tired and sad, knowing that this victory had come at a terrible cost. "What are our next steps?" SKED Admiral Brooks. 2 years had passed since the Korthic invasion of Earth failed. The galaxy was learning that humanity was no longer just another small species hiding on one planet. Commander Steve Taylor stood on the bridge of the U's Liberation, watching as another Korthic world burned in the distance. This was the 43rd Korthic planet that human forces had liberated. The campaign was moving faster than anyone had expected. The aliens who had once seemed so powerful were falling back on every front. "Status report," Taylor ordered his bridge crew. "All Korthic military installations on the surface have been destroyed," reported Lieutenant Carol White, his tactical officer. "We've located 3 slave camps holding approximately 50,000 prisoners from various species." Taylor nodded. "Begin landing operations. Get those people out of there." The Liberation was part of a new type of warship that humans had built specifically for this war. It carried not just weapons, but also medical facilities, food supplies, and transport ships for rescued prisoners. Every human vessel in the Liberation fleet was designed to free slaves and destroy Korthic forces. On the planet's surface, Major Julie Chun led a team of intelligence specialists through the ruins of a Korthic command center. Her job was to gather information about other Korthic worlds and find evidence of their crimes against other species. "Major," called Sergeant Bob Wilson from across the room, "you need to see this." Chun walked over to where Wilson was standing next to a large computer terminal. The screen showed a map of the galaxy with hundreds of red dots marking Korthic-controlled worlds. "How many?" Chun asked. "At least 300 systems," Wilson replied. "And look at this." He pointed to another part of the screen. "These are worlds they've completely strip-mined. Nothing left alive." Chun felt sick as she looked at the data. The Korthic had been destroying entire planets for their resources, killing every living thing in the process. The scale of their crimes was almost impossible to understand. "Download everything," she ordered. "Command needs to see this." Meanwhile, Captain Ryan Foster was leading the liberation of the planet's largest slave camp. His Marines moved carefully through the facility, knowing that the Korthic sometimes booby-trapped their installations when they retreated. The first thing that hit Foster when he entered the main prison building was the smell. Thousands of beings from dozens of different species had been packed into spaces meant for far fewer prisoners. Many of them were sick and weak from years of poor treatment. "Medical teams to the front," Foster called over his radio. "We need doctors down here immediately." As his teams worked to free the prisoners, Foster noticed that many of them seemed afraid of their human rescuers. They had been slaves for so long that they didn't trust anyone wearing military uniforms. One prisoner, a tall blue-skinned being with 4 arms, approached Foster cautiously. The creature spoke in broken English, having learned the language from Korthic computers. "You are the humans?" the alien asked. "Yes," Foster replied. "We're here to free you. You're safe now." The alien stared at him for a long moment. "The Korthic said humans were weak. They said you would be easy to conquer." The Korthic were wrong about a lot of things," Foster said gently. "What's your name?" "I am Veltar of the Zelani people. My world was destroyed 3 years ago. The Korthek killed everyone who resisted and enslaved the rest of us. Foster felt anger building in his chest. He had heard similar stories on every world they liberated. The Korthek had been systematically destroying civilizations for decades. Veltar, Foster said, your people don't have to be slaves anymore. We're going to make sure the Korthek never hurt anyone again. The Zilani looked at Foster with something that might have been hope. You would do this for beings you do not know. Yes, Foster replied without hesitation. That's what humans do. News of humanity's liberation campaign spread quickly across the galaxy. Species that had been hiding from the Korthek for generations began to reach out to human forces, offering information and assistance. Admiral Helen Brooks, now commanding all human military operations, received reports from across Korthek space. The aliens were retreating from dozens of worlds, abandoning their slave populations rather than fighting human forces. They're running. Scared, reported Colonel Kate Washington during a strategy meeting. Our intelligence suggests that many Korthek commanders are refusing orders to engage human fleets. Brooks studied the tactical display showing human operations across the galaxy. What about their leadership? Any word from their government? That's the interesting part, Washington replied. We're receiving surrender offers from individual Korthek commanders, but nothing from their central government. It's like their empire is falling apart from within. Dr. Lisa Cameron, now serving as humanity's chief alien relations specialist, had a different perspective. The Korthek Empire was built on fear and overwhelming force. When they can't intimidate their enemies anymore, their whole system breaks down. Explain, Brooks said. Think about it, Cameron continued. For centuries, the Korthek conquered worlds by showing up with massive fleets and demanding surrender. Most species gave up without fighting because resistance seemed hopeless, but we proved that the Korthek can be beaten. Now every enslaved species in the galaxy knows it's possible to fight back. As if to prove Cameron's point, reports began coming in of slave rebellions on Korthek worlds that human forces hadn't even reached yet. Entire planets were throwing off their chains before human ships arrived to liberate them on the Korthek homeworld. What remained of their government was in chaos. General Kethmore, now the highest-ranking military officer still alive, stood before the Korthak High Council trying to explain how their mighty empire was collapsing. The humans have destroyed over half our fleet, Kethmore reported. They've liberated 200 worlds and freed millions of slaves. Worse, the freed species are joining their cause. We now face not just human forces, but combined fleets from dozens of species. High Counselor Veshta, an ancient Korthek with scars covering his entire body, leaned forward in his chair. How is this possible? The humans were primitives just 2 years ago. They learned from us, Kethmore replied bitterly. Every tactic we used against other species, they've turned against us. But they're also doing something we never did, which is? They're showing mercy to defeated enemies. Species that join them willingly are treated as equals. Even our own soldiers who surrender are given proper treatment as prisoners of war. Vashta snarled. Weakness. No, Kethmore said quietly. Strength. The humans are building an alliance while we built an empire of fear. Which one do you think lasts longer? Back in human space, Commander Taylor was meeting with representatives from the Zilani people. Veltar, the former slave Foster had rescued, was now speaking for his entire species. The Zilani wish to join your alliance, Veltar said in much improved English. We have ships and weapons hidden from the Korthek. We want to help free other worlds. Taylor nodded. We welcome your help. But I want to be clear about something. This isn't a human empire we're building. When this war is over, every species will be free to govern themselves, Veltar looked surprised. You would give up control of the worlds you liberate? We're not conquering them, Taylor explained. We're freeing them. There's a difference. Similar conversations were happening across human-controlled space. The Manthari people contributed their advanced sensor technology. The Korvan provided ships designed for transporting refugees. The Delani shared their knowledge of Korthek weak points. What had started as a human liberation campaign was becoming a galaxy-wide alliance against tyranny. Major Chun's intelligence teams had been busy mapping the remaining Korthik territories. Their latest reports showed that the alien empire had been reduced to fewer than 50 worlds, most of them heavily fortified strongholds. "We've got a problem," Chun reported to Admiral Brooks. "The remaining Korthik forces have consolidated around their most defended worlds. Taking them is going to cost us." Brooks studied the intelligence reports. The remaining Korthik worlds were protected by massive space fortresses and planetary defense systems. Breaking through would require direct assault, which meant heavy casualties. "Recommendations?" Brooks asked. "We offer them terms," Chun suggested. "Complete surrender in exchange for fair treatment, no executions, no revenge. Just justice under galactic law." "And if they refuse?" Chun's expression hardened. "Then we do what we have to do." The surrender offer was broadcast to every remaining Korthik world. The terms were simple: lay down your weapons, release all remaining slaves, and submit to trial for war crimes. In exchange, the Korthik people would be allowed to live peacefully under the protection of the new Galactic Alliance. Most Korthik commanders accepted immediately. They had seen what happened to worlds that resisted human liberation forces. The humans always won, but they also always showed mercy to those who surrendered. A few Korthik strongholds refused the offer. These were the hardcore military bases, commanded by officers who would rather die fighting than face justice for their crimes. Admiral Brooks made the difficult decision to assault these remaining worlds. The battles were fierce and costly, but the outcome was never in doubt. Human forces, supported by their alien allies, had become the most powerful military force the galaxy had ever seen. 5 years had passed since the last Korthik world surrendered to human forces. The galaxy was a very different place now. Where once there had been an empire built on fear and slavery, there was now a confederation of free worlds working together for mutual protection and prosperity. Admiral Jake Morrison, the same man who had been captured during humanity's first contact with the Korthik, stood in the main courtroom on Earth. Today was the final day of the war crimes trials that had been broadcast across the galaxy for the past 2 years. Former General Kethmore sat in the defendant's chair, his green scales now dull with age and defeat. He was the last of the high-ranking Korthik officers to be tried. Most of the others had already been sentenced to life imprisonment for their crimes against various species. "General Kethmore," said Judge Patricia Wells, a human who had been chosen to oversee the trials, "you have been found guilty of genocide, slavery, and crimes against sentient beings. Do you have any final words before sentencing?" Kethmore looked up at the judge, then at the viewing gallery filled with representatives from dozens of species his empire had oppressed. "I serve the empire I was born into," he said quietly. "I believed we were bringing order to a chaotic galaxy." "I was wrong," Judge Wells nodded. "You are sentenced to life imprisonment. However, the court recognizes your cooperation during these proceedings and your efforts to prevent unnecessary bloodshed. During the final surrender, you will serve your sentence in a facility where you can contribute to historical research about the crimes of the Korthik Empire." As Kethmore was led away, Morrison felt a mix of satisfaction and sadness. Justice had been served, but it couldn't bring back the billions of beings who had died under Korthik rule. Dr. Lisa Cameron approached Morrison as they left the courtroom. She now served as the head of the Galactic Historical Commission, working to document the crimes of the fallen empire and ensure they were never forgotten. "The memorial project on Zelani Prime is almost complete," she told Morrison. "Veltar and his people have done an amazing job preserving the records of every species the Korthik destroyed." Morrison nodded. The memorials were important. They served as reminders of what happened when civilized beings allowed evil to grow unchecked. "Any word on the new contact protocols?" Morrison asked. "The Galactic Council approved them yesterday," Cameron replied. "Every species that wants to join the Confederation has to sign agreements protecting the rights of other sentient beings. No more conquests, no more slavery. The Galactic Council was humanity's greatest achievement. It wasn't a government that ruled over other species, but a voluntary organization where each member world had an equal voice. Humans had deliberately chosen not to lead the council, instead taking advisory roles that helped maintain peace. Captain Ryan Foster, now an admiral commanding the Galactic Defense Force, walked up to join their conversation. The Defense Force was made up of ships and crews from over 200 different species, all working together to protect their freedom. "We've got a situation developing in the Outer Rim," Foster reported. "New species making contact and they don't seem friendly." Morrison raised an eyebrow. "Details?" "They call themselves the Hegemony of Vask. 3 days ago, they contacted the Council demanding tribute from all lesser species in exchange for protection. When Ambassador Chun tried to explain our Confederation principles, they made some very unfriendly threats." Cameron frowned. "What kind of threats?" "The usual conqueror talk. Submit or face the consequences. They seem to think they're dealing with the same kind of divided, fearful galaxy that existed before we took down the Korthek." Morrison almost smiled. "I think they're about to get a very educational experience." The next day, in the Galactic Council chambers on the neutral world of Haven, representatives from 300 species gathered for an emergency session. The chamber was a massive dome that could hold thousands of beings of all shapes and sizes. Ambassador Lisa Cameron, now representing humanity in the council, stood at the speaker's podium. Around her sat delegates from every free world in the galaxy, from the towering Menthari to the tiny but brilliant Karvan. "Fellow council members," Cameron began, "we have received additional communications from the Hegemony of Vask. They have given us 72 hours to begin sending tribute, or they will demonstrate their power by destroying what they call a few example worlds." Angry voices erupted throughout the chamber. The Zilani delegate, now a close friend of humanity, stood up to speak. "The Vask sound exactly like the Korthek did when they first arrived in our space," Veltar said, his forearms gesturing emphatically. "They believe that fear and superior firepower make them unstoppable." "What do we know about their military capabilities?" asked the representative from the Delany Collective. Admiral Foster stepped forward. "Our long-range scouts have observed their fleet. Approximately 500 ships, technology roughly equivalent to what the Korthek had before we upgraded our weapons. They're powerful, but not beyond our ability to handle. The question," said the Korvan delegate in her high-pitched voice, "is how we respond. Do we try diplomacy first, or do we show them immediately that threatening innocent worlds has consequences?" Cameron looked around the chamber at representatives from species that had once been slaves, refugees, or prisoners. All of them had been freed by the alliance that humanity had helped build. All of them had sworn to protect others from the same fate they had suffered. "I propose we give them one chance," Cameron said. "A clear message explaining what happened to the last empire that threatened innocent beings in this galaxy. If they choose to ignore that warning, then we show them why the Korthik Empire no longer exists." The vote was unanimous. Every species in the Confederation agreed to the plan. The warning message was sent to the Hegemony of Vask by Admiral Morrison himself. He appeared on their communications screen in full military uniform, with the flags of 300 allied worlds behind him. "Leaders of the Hegemony of Vask," Morrison began. "I am Admiral Morrison of the Galactic Defense Force. 5 years ago, another empire came to this galaxy making threats similar to yours. The Korthik Empire controlled hundreds of worlds and had enslaved entire species for centuries. They believed their superior technology and numbers made them invincible." Morrison paused, letting that information sink in. "The Korthik Empire no longer exists. Every world they controlled has been liberated. Their leaders have been tried for war crimes. Their entire military force was destroyed. This happened because they made the same mistake you are making now." The transmission continued with footage from the liberation campaigns, showing Korthik worlds being freed and alien prisoners being rescued. The message was clear: this galaxy was under the protection of an alliance that had already proven it. could destroy empires? You have 24 hours to withdraw your threats and open peaceful negotiations, Morrison concluded. This is the only warning you will receive. The response from the Vask came 12 hours later. Their leader, a tall reptilian being called Supreme Commander Drex High, appeared on screen with obvious anger. You dare threaten the hegemony of Vask? Drex High snarled. We have conquered 50 star systems. Our fleet has never been defeated. Your little alliance of weak species will learn to fear us. Morrison watched the transmission with Admiral Foster and General Chen in the command center of the defense station orbiting Haven. Well, Foster said calmly, I guess they chose the hard way. Deploy the fleet, Morrison ordered. Full liberation protocols. I want their military destroyed, their leaders captured, and any slaves they're holding freed. Sir? Chun asked. What about their homeworld? Intelligence suggests they have over 2 billion Vask civilians. Same as always, Morrison replied. Military targets only. Once their government surrenders, the Vask people get the same choice as everyone else. Join the Confederation as equals or remain independent under our protection. The battle against the hegemony of Vask lasted exactly 6 hours. The alien invaders had expected to face a collection of primitive species armed with basic weapons. Instead, they encountered the most advanced and experienced military force in galactic history. Human ships worked alongside Zalani cruisers, Manthari destroyers, and vessels from dozens of other species. The coordination was perfect, the tactics flawless, and the outcome never in doubt. Supreme Commander Drex High, his flagship crippled and his fleet destroyed, sent a desperate final message before surrendering. This is impossible, he transmitted. How did inferior species develop such power? The answer came from Veltar, commanding a Zalani liberation ship. We are not inferior, and we are not afraid. We learned from the humans that when good people stand together, bullies always lose. After the Vask surrender, their former slaves were freed and their leaders put on trial. The Vask people themselves were given a choice. They could join the Confederation and live peacefully with other species, or they could remain independent under galactic protection. Most chose to join. Within a year, former Vask colonies were sending representatives to the Galactic Council. The defeat of the hegemony of Vask sent a message across the galaxy that reached even the most distant star systems. New species making contact now approached. The Confederation with respect and requests for peaceful relations.